Hi guys, welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana. Hello.
Hello. We're going to be answering a viewer question today. But before we do, let's launch into a body practice.
All right. I want to guide us through a little bit of a fun one that you can all of these you could do with kids and anybody, but this is one that I always recommend to parents to do with their kids because it's like a game. So feel one part of your body touching something. So right now I'm noticing my foot on the floor. And just have a notice of what's happening with your breath. And I want you to find a rectangle in your space to look at. And look at that rectangle. Feel your body touching whatever it's touching. And then we're going to turn and look in a different direction in our space and find another rectangle. And again, just notice what your body's touching. And then turn to another part of your space. And this time I'm going to challenge you a little bit. See if you can find a rectangle in some place that you don't normally see this rectangle. You don't normally pay attention to it. And again, feel your body touching whatever it's touching. Look at your rectangle. Notice your breath. And then that's it. And notice how that feels for you to be, for a few moments, really intentional about connecting to your body, really intentional about noticing your breath, and really intentional about connecting with your space. And this is a really fun practice because it reminds me of can you find what's new within what's familiar? Right? We're walking past rectangles all the time in your home. But most likely you haven't been noticing them, or there's certain ones that you don't really notice. And I like how this is symbolic for relationships, right? Are you able to see something new in the person you sleep next to every night? Are you able to see something else in the person that you've been fighting with the last little while, right? Or are we always seeing people and ourselves through the exact same lens and creating the exact same patterns, right? So being able to find something new within what's familiar, being able to intentionally give yourself the task to look for something. You know, right now we intentionally looked for rectangles, but could you intentionally look for someone's good intention? Could you intentionally look for how that person might be struggling today? Just so you have some more awareness, right?
I always feel so soothed, like my nervous system relaxes doing these exercises. And I also feel tactical and pleased with myself because I know I'm rewiring my mental patterns. And I know that every time I do these exercises, I still have people's voices in my head suggesting that this is slow and silly and sweaty balls Saturday Night Live thing. But the fact is that you're giving your brain new practice. You're causing new synapses to fire, and you're building your capacity to, in difficult moments, remember yourself. And that is just a complete game changer of genuine presence. So I love doing these exercises, and I want everybody to remember what they're for.
Yeah, it's okay if they feel uncomfortable. It's okay if they don't make you feel better. That's not the intention, right? But what it does is it also gives you reprieve from your ruminating mind, which I know a lot of us have, myself included, because it gives you just enough mental work that it's sort of hard to think about whatever we were thinking about and look for things. Yeah. And then I always tell my clients, and even if your brain is so strong that it's very good at ruminating and looking for rectangles, let it ruminate and also feel your feet and look at the rectangle. Yeah.
Nice.
I actually received a message recently. Someone said, I still look for rectangles when I'm out. And it's helped so much. So,
that's very sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have got a question from a viewer. through Instagram. You guys are welcome to send us questions. We've got in the show notes the link to the Google Doc where you can submit your questions or topic ideas. You can also contact us through our other various social media and websites, which are all linked in the show notes as well. We get a lot of questions from viewers, from people in workshops, and then we spend time with them one-on-one or two-on-one, answering their question. And I know when I started doing this work, if I would ask a question, I'd feel like guilty, like I'm taking up all the space by getting this answer. But then I also remember the experience of getting so much from other people's sharing and the answers they were getting.
Yeah, so when you hear someone else's question that we are answering, you might notice that, wow, I'm going through the exact same thing, or I have the same question, or you might think, nope, that's not me at all, and want to tune out. So we want to encourage you to see if you can find something in what we're sharing that's helpful for you in your life, even if your life circumstances aren't the same as what's being presented in the question, because at the end of the day, we're all human and the human experiences are very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a very self-involved sort of person, so I'm always applying everything everybody says about other things to myself. And that's, I think, a really good skill to have when it comes to awakening to your patterns and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you're going to hear a lot of questions, and you can get reflective work done with a linoleum floor if you want to. Anything can be cause for self-reflection and discovery if that's where your interest and energy lies.
Yeah, so listen to the question, see what you see in yourself reflected back to you, and bring some curiosity.
Mm-hmm. And what the questions bring up too, like if you feel disgusted by somebody's question, or like, oh, how could somebody ask that? Or like, I would never think that sort of thing. Like, there's great work for you to discover in there. What repels us and happen within us.
Or you might notice, wow, they have so much courage to ask that. I would have felt too afraid to ask that. And maybe you can use that as permission and inspiration to ask that to us, to people in your life, or maybe just to ask more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think you've just probably accidentally highlighted like a really key difference in our attitudes that I think is really relatable and super important too. My defensive mechanisms would go to, ugh, that's a disgusting question. And your like pleasantness results in you going, wow, they're courageous. I would have been too afraid to ask that. If I dig more into my protective, defended disgust, it's often something gentle and true like that, wow, I was afraid to even look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's every time, we used to say this in women's group a lot, like every time you offer a share, sharing what's going on with you personally and what you're struggling with, or a question that you have, it's permission giving to everyone else in the room to ask something or ask the same, or know that there's nothing wrong with them for having that question or concern. It's a real gift to the world when we're willing to share ourselves.
Her question is effectively, what do I do with my fears of having daughters based on my own experience of being a daughter? So there's so many things that could mean, but what comes to your mind right away when you hear that question?
What comes to my mind right away is it's okay to have fears. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to want something and also feel scared. And what that question sort of brings up for me is, this is someone who wants to be intentional about what they create now with their daughters, because there was something that didn't feel quite right for them in their lived experience of being a child. And so I imagine there's some healing work that's important. What wasn't working for me as a child? What do I want to offer my children moving forward. So lots of different exploration. I have other prompts that come up in my mind, but that's my initial thoughts of normalizing feeling scared and let it show us that it means there's something that's important to us. What is it that's important to you? What do you want to be creating in your life? In this case, what kind of relationship do you want to create with your daughters? What do you notice that you needed as a daughter that you didn't get? And how do you want to not just bring that into your children's lives, but what do you need as a person, as a parent, in order to be able to create that with and for your kids?
Yeah, that brings to mind circumstances, life circumstances and relationships. When we're now living our adult lives and we're projecting all of our fears and expectations usually from our childhood, to take a good, realistic look at what your circumstances are currently and what they were then. Taking stock of who was having an effect on you as a daughter, who is having an effect on your daughters or your daughters to be, what the living circumstances are, what the physical surroundings are, what the energy of the atmosphere is. I think it's really important to slow down in the moment and take stock of the present and not let our projections from the past take over what's happening in the moment. And at the same time, to recognize those fears or triggers as they come up. Really about slowing down and being present.
Yeah. Is this a mother who submitted the question? Is that what you sensed?
I got the impression that she was pregnant.
Okay. Pregnant. Okay. I know you well enough to know what you're saying. The reason being, I have 2 boys. And I know that when I was pregnant and I didn't know whether I was having boys or girls, I don't think I had necessarily a preference, but I was aware of, I wonder if it's going to be more challenging to mother girls because of what it might remind me of what was hard being a girl, having my lived experience, as a child. And I think one of my friends years ago who had kids before me, when we were having a really, candid conversation about motherhood one day, and she had a daughter and a son, and she said, I find that having a daughter is more difficult for me. Not my daughter is more difficult, but the experience of it is harder for me because it shows me the pain that I experience as a girl, as a daughter that hasn't been healed yet. And so it's much more confronting for me. And she had said that, and I found that really insightful and interesting to hear. And then becoming a mother myself, I can see that as intentional as I'm being with raising my boys, there are certain things that it's not like reliving my childhood in quite the same way. Yeah. And so I'm not as confronted on an everyday basis. Right. And of course, girls, boys, they're humans. Right. And not everyone's experience as a girl or a boy or a woman or a man is the same. So it's like everyone has their own experience. But what I've heard from, for example, moms of girls, what they have found challenging is, I felt really left out and I wasn't part of the girl gang. And when they see that or see that happening with their own daughters, a lot of times their own fear and hurt becomes center stage, and it would make sense, right? If we haven't had the opportunity or the awareness to do our healing work around that, or maybe we think that we're over that hurt, which is reasonable to think, but it's not until you see that happening to your own children, and like mamas are like mama bears, right? And that it stirs up a whole bunch of other stuff. So, what I would want this person to know, and anyone to know who is experiencing something similar, is we can't always anticipate all the things that are going to be hard. But learning to tend to how you feel and not making yourself wrong, and learning to understand what you need moment to moment, is going to help you be able to give yourself what you need, to ask for what you need, so that you can bring more intention and clarity and love and trust to what you help your daughters create in terms of their belief in themselves, and in terms of supporting them to create relationships that feel fulfilling and healthy for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this reminds me about what we were talking about last episode, actually. Supporting people despite maybe differences of opinion or understanding, which certainly generationally, like, I don't understand teenage girls. I did when I was one. I do not now. I can't imagine what it would have been like mothering me. I was fairly wild, and definitely practicing love without attachment to outcomes, loving messaging when maybe you don't understand exactly what's going on for your daughter, or maybe she's not open to sharing, but maintaining that loving center.
I think that's the thing all kids want, is just to know my parent loves me and all of me is allowed. And that takes us really far in terms of supporting our children and creating healthy relationships with our children. And sometimes we get really caught up in what should I say and what should I do and how do I prevent this? And I love what Dr. Gordon Neufeld says about this. And it was really profound for me as a mom. He said something along the lines of, as a parent, you want to protect your kids from everything, or as much as you can. And the reality is you can't. They're going to become wounded, right? There's many opportunities to have hurt feelings, to have things not go their way. And we just can't possibly prevent all those things. And it wouldn't actually be healthy for them, and it wouldn't prepare them for the world, and it wouldn't leave them with this belief that I can trust myself to get through hard things. But he said, the one way to protect our children is to create a safe and loving relationship with them, safe and trusting relationship where they feel like I can come to my parents with anything. And they might not always love it. They might not be happy. They might feel disappointed. But at the end of the day, like, the core is not shaken. Like, I still have deep belief in their love for me and their acceptance of me and their support. And that has really stuck with me, is to always bring that essence and intention. Mm-hmm. And I can't always bring that because I'm human. And some moments are really hard, but I can come back to it and make a repair if I wasn't able to.
Yeah.
But
I'm just being conscious of that, awareness that so much is going to come up for you as a parent that does not make sense to share with your child or burden your child with, and that it makes sense to have a lot of feelings about these things, and that those need to be managed as well.
Yeah, like something that we, facilitate in women's group and we participate in women's group is using prompts to discover what's there for us, right? And prompts that I will always walk people through when there's some element of fear involved is something I'm afraid of is, And then I also want to explore the flip side. Something I'm excited for is, right? Because there's always the other side as well. And something that I need is, what do you need to help yourself be with this fear? Right? And then, so I will give myself, or so I will, right? What will you do about that when you realize you have a certain need? Mm-hmm.
Those are great self-discovery prompts, and they diffuse a lot of energy as well. When we take our fears out and play with them a little bit, just through exploration, it takes a lot of their power away. Definitely.
For sure. This, I want to say, like, being a daughter, being a mother, being just a human and having connections with people. What I find gets in the way of connection with my kids is if my fear is front and center and it's in our space. Because when my fear is front and center and in our space, I can no longer truly listen and truly see. It's all going through my lens of fear. And then my body has those panic feelings. And then typically when we panic, we want to find solutions. We want to tell people what we think they should do, or what's not a good idea and what is a good idea. And immediately the other person is like, oh, well, what about me? Now I got to sit with you and your fear. And I find that really blocks true, like, connection. And so advice, encouragement I would give to any parent, but really any person, because parenting is just a relationship, right? So if you're not a parent, you still have relationships, and you still have fear because you're human, is to find your people. And that can just mean at least one person. And if one person is not available, be your person in that moment to give your fear a voice and get these things out of your system. Use these prompts or some other way, or movement, or a combination of things, or sounding, to move that fear energy, because your fear is valid. Even if it makes no sense to anyone else, even if other people aren't afraid of the same things, it matters because you feel it, right? Because when you can give that fear some love, some space to move, you shift it out of that space in between you and the other person.
Yeah.
And then you can see the other person more clearly.
Yeah. You're making space for yourself, really, in that moment, instead of just your fear. As people often talk about being self-conscious, and I think that's such a misnomer, because when you're describing being self-conscious, or putting fear front and center, putting anxiety front and center, it's not yourself you're conscious of, it's your fear and your anxiety you're conscious of. That absolutely gets in the way of real interaction between people.
Yeah, and it's a real relationship changer to be able to say, instead of saying I'm self-conscious, can we practice saying, right now I feel a little afraid of this, or right now I feel really worried about that, right? With one of my kids, he was full of fear as a young boy, and we really learned to put our fears not aside, but like take them to adult places so that we could be with his fear. And one thing that I could tell shifted everything for him was when we would say, it's okay to feel scared. I love you. It's okay to cry if you need to. I'm here for you. Right? And then when he would settle a bit, we would baby step our way into, okay, well, what is the thing you're excited for? And he turned out, and is continuing to turn out, to be a really courageous boy. And it wasn't because we pushed him to do the next thing. And it wasn't because we shamed him out of his fear or tried to logic him out of his fear. It was because we said, it's okay to be scared. I love you anyways. I love you because you're you, and we all feel scared sometimes. Right? And even to be able to say, bless everybody that has asked me this question before, because I've asked it myself as well. I say, what should I tell my partner? Because I feel really afraid of this, and I feel afraid of telling them because of XYZ. And I just don't know what to do. And I'll say, how about just tell them that? Like, oh, okay.
So simple.
So many of us have learned that it's not okay to just say what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
Right? And yet, I find that when we tell people that, people who love us and want to be there for us, they appreciate getting to see us better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and even to be able to say, I feel really scared to tell you this thing I feel really scared about.
Yeah. Such a beautiful context. That's, yeah. So for the viewer who wrote in, I would say that's a great place where we started, and a great place to end up too, is just acknowledging that you're afraid and that that's okay.
Mm-hmm. And that there might be some tears to cry around that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? There might be some things also to feel angry about that were not okay from your experience in the past that you don't want to repeat. Yeah. I think I want to say one more thing about this. Mm-hmm. I think it applies in a situation like this, but also I've heard people say, I had such a hard childhood and family life. I don't ever want to be a parent. I'm probably going to mess up my kid. And I think, everyone's entitled to choosing what feels right for them. And also, I want people to know that you have the ability and capacity and permission to create something different. The only thing it takes to create something different is a different set of skills. Right? Some more awareness, some intentional skill building, some intentional practice, and you can create that. Right? Allowing yourself to bring in supports that you need in order to create this thing that part of you also feels excited to have in your life. Right? And maybe I'll share a body practice around this. What do you think about that, Steph?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're listening, you can bring to mind, obviously you're listening, bring to mind something that you feel afraid about. And let your, feel your butt on the seat or your feet on the floor. And if it feels good, place a hand somewhere on your body that brings you comfort. Just notice how that feels, to feel the weight of your hand. Maybe you notice the temperature as well. And we're going to say a few things out loud, which is part of me feels scared about. So just use that prompt, part of me feels scared about. Finish that sentence. And then we'll add on, and part of me is excited for. So in the context of that fear, what do you also feel excited for, even if it's only 1%? Part of me also feels excited for or excited about. And then I like to end it with, and I'm learning to be with both. Right? To be able to be with what you fear and what you dream of, what excites you. We need to be able to do that to create a life that's fulfilling, because otherwise we are swept up and we live in our fears, or we try to white knuckle our way through with, I'm so excited about this thing, I'm just going to be motivated and do the thing. But then fear always creeps up eventually. So it's about learning to do both, learning to hold both.
That is such a beautiful, powerful tool.
Mm-hmm.
Something I'm afraid of, something I'm excited for, and I'm learning to be with both.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
There's
like
so much
whether
in
the
there.
fear is 99.9% and, you know, the excitement is like 0.01, I don't know. Math, not good at math. They both exist.
Yeah.
And they're both allowed and they're both okay.
Yeah. Huge tool. I want everyone to practice this. These simple tools that we've promised you, you've got to practice them for them to work. And I promise they work.
This is such a simple tool and it's such a life-changing tool. I do weekly coaching calls, and what's really neat for me facilitating these calls is when I hear people, you know, they'll unmute their mic and they'll tell me what's going on with their life because they're sharing something or they want to ask a question. And all of a sudden they start speaking like this. So Georgiana, you know, I'm in this situation and part of me feels this and also part of me feels that. Or part of me is needing this and I think I'm also needing this other thing. And that's when I feel so excited because I know life for this person is never going to be the same again. Because a whole different world opens up when we can speak in and for those parts and honor them and not make any of them wrong.
Nuance. Right? Nothing is black and white. We're not black and white. Mm-hmm. Making room.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say on this one?
I think that's it. I just want to encourage everyone to share your questions with us because it's through questions that we create rich conversation. And that's not just Steph and I create rich conversations, but just human existence. Rich conversations come through questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys. That's it for now. So like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody you love. We'll see you next time.
See you. Bye.
Bye.